Hello, everybody. Pascal here from Neutrality Studies, and today I'm talking again to Michael von der Schulenburg, a German parliamentarian in the EU Parliament. Michael, welcome back.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Michael, we need to talk about what happened recently with the newest sanction package against several citizens of the EU and of Switzerland as well. When did you learn about this news that people like Jacques Bull and others were sanctioned?
Only on the day they take the decisions. We didn't know that anything before. We don't know anything about it. It's actually all secret. We don't know the protocols. We just see what you also see when they give out their statements. And that's all we know. I mean, what has happened is now that there are 17 people have been put on the sanctions list. That now we have altogether 59 people, also Europeans, also Germans, now Swiss. We have two Swiss,
French,
by the way.
One or two French.
Yes.
Yeah.
We have people. It's alleged for people who support the propaganda of Russia, but you have people there who would have nothing to do with Russia, who would deal with Gaza or deal with Africa. I mean, it's general things about things. It's really an attack on the social media and on people like you, actually, in the fact, no, but indirectly it's through people who you interviewed. And so we have, first of all, as a personal side of it, somebody with sanctions becomes basically an outlaw. I mean, we're going back to the Middle Ages. Somebody has been told that he has no right anymore, or she has no right. I mean, they don't have bank accounts anymore. They can't work. They can't have any enterprises. In other words, they have no income. They cannot travel and things like this one. And it's virtually impossible for them to take a legal challenge. It is so difficult, and that's probably why they also use the European Union for it, because it's hid behind a wall of this European Union. We shouldn't forget what happens here really is a complete denial of the rule of law, and here the council is a lawmaker and the judge at the same time. And when you look at the Lisbon Treaty, that then any decisions which are taken by the Council on foreign relations, and that's part of the Foreign Relations Council, cannot be challenged in the European Court of Justice. So, I mean, if you have basically a situation where like in all kingdoms, where Henry VIII decides what happens to his wives and nobody can say anything against it. It's really like this one. It's amazing. And yeah.
Sorry, can you repeat that? I wasn't aware of this. So decisions taken by the European Council, so by the council that meets of the different ministers, those decisions cannot be challenged. But
not all. Court of Justice. No, it's only on foreign policy. But these sanction things, the council is divided into certain
groups. Yeah.
Groups according to subjects, and one of the most important now is, of course, the one of foreign relations, which is chaired by Mrs. Callas, but it's under Mr. Costa because he's responsible for the things. So these decisions can, according to the treaty, not be challenged in the European Court of Justice. So how they challenge, I really don't know. I mean, there are ways to do this, but it will be very, very difficult and very, very expensive. And given that we have people who have no access to their accounts anymore, have no access to any work, cannot be employed and things like this one, I mean, it's virtually impossible for them to defend themselves.
But how is it possible that you, who are sitting in the European Parliament, that you are not informed about this? I mean, aren't these branches are not at all co-equal? They are not. These decisions are rammed through by a handful of people. Like, how in this instance, how did it happen? Because there was another council involved, right? The ambassadors to the EU in this case. Can you explain how this?
It's a council which meets at different levels.
Yeah.
The Foreign Relations Group has a meeting probably whenever they want to among the ambassadors of these countries, and then it's, of course, the foreign ministers who take the final decision. So the ambassadors' meetings is basically to prepare these things, which they did, but we didn't know the details. And then there was a meeting of foreign ministers who decided it. We have no protocol of these meetings. We don't know how they decided it. We don't know who voted for what. We don't know. It's it's actually, when you go into a court case, it has to be transparent, but this is totally not transparent. So it's a really bad thing, and it is. And it's a warning against all of us, also me. I mean, in the end, no, I mean, we could all be sanctions for some dubious things that we basically, by being against this war policy of the European Union, that we in fact support Russia's war or something like this one. So, and in the case of Jacques Baud, I mean, this is very, very clear, but most of the others we don't know. I mean, who knows of these 59? And I think that that's great, very sad. And with all these 59s, we didn't do much. I mean, we have prepared we tried to do something by having a legal expertise on this whole thing by very senior people, but not the political one. It is now a report which is out by a former judge of the European Court of Justice, and both professors, and the French professor for international law who made a joint report. It's very professionally done. It's not people who necessarily think like us politically, and they only reviewed if the process of putting people on a sanctions list and the type of sanctions which are imposed on them, if they are not contradict the European law, the Charter for Basic Rights of the European Union, for instance, or international law. And their conclusions very clearly, there is no justification that by our own law, not to speak about others, to do this in such a way. So they don't even they don't even question whether we have sanctions or not. They just say that if they have sanctions, we have to do it according to the rule of law, and the rule of law in the European Union is determined. I mean, we have it. It's not that's not there. We just don't apply it, and we feel that we can do it over it, and that's, I think it's also why governments decide to take the European Union, because a big question in this whole thing is why using the Council of the European Union for this one. All countries in Europe, Russia also, and China, all countries have laws which protect them against unfair reporting, ill reporting, inciting violence, and all these type of things. So there is a very sophisticated law on these things, where things are also defined. Why do we go to the European Union and do this? It's exactly because we want to circumvent the rule of law. So so there's no need to go to the European Union. I mean, people could be tried in Switzerland or in Germany or France, but we don't do that. We don't do that because we would probably lose it.
They didn't do anything illegal. I mean, so far, Jacques Baud, Nathalie Yamb, the others, Hussein Dogru, they didn't do anything illegal. They were speaking about things that they think is important. But it's
we have made an inquiry to the commission, asking how they define disinformation, which is a crime people are accused of, and we got a reply: there is no such definition. That means it's not only question whether it's a crime, there is not even a definition for what these people are accused of. There's no definition on this. So these are completely arbitrary things, and we should not forget they fulfill, of course, a purpose. They should intimidate people who say differently. Now, we know that in Europe, in Germany, extreme case, the established media are all on one line. I mean, if you read the FATS, you read them all, no? It's always the same. They take over the government position on the war and things like this one. And where you find a parallel news and things like this one, of course, in social media. And this is an attack on social media. The double standards, the hypocrisy of the whole thing is so evident here, because at the same time we had the Sakharov Prize given to two journalists who are incarcerated, which I think absolutely justified. They're incarcerated in Georgia, in Belarus, and I think that we should look at these things. But at the same time, at exactly the same time, we intimidated 17 people in addition for the opinion they have. And when you go to the parliament, you have everywhere these writing on the walls, projected. I sent you a picture of it, which
I will superimpose it. Yeah,
freedom of thoughts. I mean, freedom of thoughts. And the things which troubles me most is that I'm here with 720 deputies in this parliament, and virtually nobody feels there is wrong something about this. I mean, this parliament is so pro-war, even deeply into the left, and that we could not find more than maybe 10 deputies who would agree with us. And although it's such a flagrant breach of rule of law and such a flagrant, double standards and hypocrisy here, that I think we should all, it's the duty of deputies to protect the people who voted for us, that we maintain our standards of rule of law and democracy, because, basically it's an attack on our own democracy.
Of course it is, but tell me, like, if there was a parliamentary majority in the European Parliament to actually go against this decision, would the Parliament have the power to influence it? Could they reverse the decisions?
I'm not so sure about this, because the statute of this Parliament is very, very strange. The Parliament has what all other parliaments have, has no right for initiative. We get things from the Commission, and on this one we decide whether we are for it or against it. But we don't have really, it's in the statutes that we cannot take initiatives. We could, for instance, not recommend from us any type of laws or recommendations or whatever it is. If we could do it nonetheless, if we take it because we are in the end elected, it would be a very interesting thing, because I think the very fact that we are the only democratically legitimized body in this whole massive thing, what's called the European Union, would give us, I think, more rights to do this, but it doesn't give us these rights by the statutes of the Parliament. That's how I see it.
Okay, but besides
the whole construction of the European Union shows here its limitations. Another limitation of it is, the separation of power. In all democracies, is one of the basic pillars is a separation of power. So one does a law, one decides whether you are against this law, a court case, you have the judiciary, and then you have the executive who implements whatever the court decides. Here, it's all in the Commission or in the Council. There is no separation. And that means that I think we act like in the Middle Ages. I tell you, these people are outlaws. They are, already that when you see these very severe, drastic penalties they get, there's no time limit. When you go to a court, they say, oh, you 3 months hard labor or whatever, or maybe you get lifetime, but you get a time. But here, when we say even going to prison, you get a time. But here, there is no time limit. I mean, it's a strange thing. You're basically outlawed for life. I mean, there is no way to say, after 3 months it's lifted. 3 months, my parents will finance me, and then afterwards I can buy bread again, because you can't buy bread now. And it is so absurd, the whole thing, that there is no outcry for it. This is probably what worries me most. Europe, with all this war rhetoric, and with all this hate, and with all this self-righteousness, basically destroys itself. I can't say it any other way. And I'm not anti-European at all, but I'm seeing here there's an enemy in this parliament. There's an enemy who doesn't want the EU, who doesn't want. It's not true at all. Or Russian spy or whatever. I'm not defending any Russian things. I'm just saying that the policies we have are self-destructive. And I think the European Union is slowly committing a suicide on many other things too. Today and tomorrow they will decide about the money. And this is an enormously important decision, whether the European can do something. And whatever the decision is, the European Union has already, whatever the decision, has set itself up to failure, whatever the decision is going to be. And it hurts me because I mean, it's here where I have my children and my grandchildren. I've just got my 5th grandchild, by the way.
Congratulations.
Here in Strasbourg. Yeah, lovely girl. And, they must have a future. And I think we have a political elite who doesn't care about this anymore.
No, the tragedy is we there was hope that a structure would be built that is pro peace, pro reconciliation, Franco-German reconcilement,
Yeah.
and then have a common structure, a common home, right, under which we can prosper. Because something is needed, right? You need something, but it turns now out that this structure is becoming the very thing that it promised. It is will help to protect us against. We
Yeah.
now have a registry. So the sanctions list has now become a registry of people without right, indefinitely, no right, no access to money. I mean,
Outlaws is the word.
it's severe, right? It's
Pascal,
severe.
outlaw is the word. It's a Middle Ages word which applies here. Outlaws. You know, in German we say vogelfrei.
Vogelfrei.
That was decided, and that's what these people are. And you know, most of these people are people of small income, not very important people, and not very important in the sense that they could do something. I hope with Jack Bull we have some other case.
But you know, the Swiss media doesn't even report on it.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Jacques Bull was on Swiss national TV many times because he's a great expert on all things intelligence and so on. You find a lot of his of the way when he of the times when he was on national TV, and until today I haven't seen a single mention of his name in that on that TV station. So this intimidation strategy, this oh no, he's a bad guy now, it works.
It works. Yeah, it works. But it has also its repercussions on all of us.
Yes,
I mean,
it does.
on the situation in Europe.
It does.
You know,
It does. So,
when we have somebody like Trump, I mean, you can imagine that Trump criticizing us for a lack of democracy. He is damn right.
yeah, and being right about it.
And to listen to from somebody like Mr. Trump, I find it. I mean, that we have to listen to. I mean, it's not quite my cup of tea, but I mean, this is amazing. I mean, how much can we dissent? How much Europe can consent?
But is there not
Further? It will go further, and it's not at the end of the whole thing, no?
No, that's the problem. This
This
is only an intermediary step.
But I might want to say a few things here about what we are doing here, because maybe you can help us to examine it, to say to the world there is something being done and that people know about it and they support it. First of all, we have published a very professionally done legal opinion about the sanction regime. It's the first time that such a thing has been done. It comes to a conclusion that these things are illegal, that you can't do that. They speak even that here the European Union has crossed the Rubicon, in the sense of a Rubicon where the Rubicon is, of course, the thing about Caesar going over the Rubicon at this river, saying that now we will have anarchy on this whole thing because you have taken your legions into Rome. That's the whole idea behind it. So I think it's a very severe criticism from them, and I think we should take it right. And I think people really around the world should know about these things. The second thing is that on Monday, hopefully, we will issue an open letter to Costa and Callas, in which we ask them, based on this study and the latest decisions, to review the things and make sure that the European Union goes back on rule of law and acts accordingly. And I think we have a lot of information for this one. It's not that we say it now out of political things. The question is how many deputies we get to support this. It will be very few, actually. But I think we at least make this letter. We make it an open letter. You will get a copy of it, where we demand. It's not only for Jacques Beau. It's very important for us. I mean, especially for me. We shouldn't forget. I mean, there are 59 people. They are all people have the same rights. I come from the UN. These are principles which I find absolutely unnegotiable. Everybody also this Mrs. Lamp and things like this one, the Swiss one, which is not reported on those things. We have all the same rights, and we have to defend them all. And for us, it's about the principles. Of course, we mentioned specifically his case, but I think we have to fight that the European Union doesn't go down this road of illegality. In our statement we put out, we accused actually Europe of being at the precipice of illegality, and I think that's what we see, and we've seen a lot of other decisions now. This Ukraine war has made these European leadership lose their heads, and that's very dangerous.
But we are seeing an incredible power grab, right, by the European Union away from the member states. But my question here, in regard to the sanctions, is: would there be ways for the individuals who are sanctioned, especially for the ones who live inside the European Union, Jacques Beau being one, but Hussein Dogru another one, there's French, no, I think the French citizen, he's outside, but the ones living in the EU, could they appeal to their state, to France, to Germany, to Belgium, and say, like, this is an infringement of my human rights. I have human rights. You must not implement this. Isn't there a way, like through the also the UN, the human rights bodies?
I have no clue. I don't know. I really don't know. I think the trick of the whole thing is that the decisions are taken by a European Council, but the implementation is done then by German authorities. Now they tell the bank to close the bank accounts and all the rest of it, and they say, but we are not responsible for the decision. That you have to appeal to the decision. We are only the executive branch in this sense. So I don't know. I've asked them, also our legal people, how can you object to the things? It's not clear. It's not clear. It's because of the hiding behind a European Union where member states, foreign ministers take these drastic decisions in secrecy. We have not to forget that. Yeah, it's very troubling. It's very, very troubling. I mean, it's really troubling.
It's difficult to escape this. Natalie Yamp, with whom I was in contact, she told me African airlines in Africa refuse from boarding her because they check who's on the list, and they don't board people on that list inside African countries, you know. That's how far this goes. It's not just by, you know, state implementation. It's by the willingness of companies who somehow have business relations with the EU to voluntarily then just exclude these people from all aspects of life.
Yeah. It's of course you know, the things is, of course, when you see about all these sanctions, the states like India and so on, they're against that and they can do that. But individuals, it's very difficult because airlines are afraid, because they fly also to Europe, that they will be penalized for having on board an outlaw.
Yeah.
And things like this one. And so I think that's, we can't, but what can I say? I mean, that's all we can do. I mean, here in the parliament, and I see very little feedback outside, and, you know, there should be an outcry, really.
How do we fix that? I mean, is there another way but like massive public outcry and, you know, just people in the streets? I guess that's the only thing. I mean, telling them that, you know, stop this, you must stop this. Or is there like, you know, appealing to Donald Trump? What kind of method do you see?
Possibly. We will ask them to come here.
Like, please, America, help us, put pressure on these.
But maybe you must know better. I mean, I think for us, by making immediately eine Pressemitteilung, die genau erklärt das, beim having diese study, beim jetzt einen offenen Brief schreiben, das ist
you just switched to German. You switched to German. Can you repeat in English?
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I? I see, from then on. Okay, no, I just want to say that, you know, we try to do what we can. We have issued a press release, which great details in it. We have drawn their attention to the legal opinion we have done. I mean, if you want to have for a lawyer who defends anybody, this might be very interesting, very good sort of thing, because they don't have the means to investigate all these things. And we are going to now do an open letter, so it will be open. How much response we get, I don't know. I don't even know. I mean, I had hoped much more, and then I had hoped that this would be picked up in Switzerland, but it hasn't.
So one thing we probably
maybe it comes. Maybe one day it comes.
One thing we probably need to do is to create first a repository, a knowledge repository online, in order to put things like yours on there and like information, so that sanctioned lawyers can go back and use that kind of information. But we need to start to get organized in order to make it easier for all the people who will land up on their lists to actually then start and work on their proceedings.
Actually,
and maybe help.
I think quite organized. You can see that on my website, on the BSV website. you find all these things there under this rubric, and they fit with each other. I mean, the press release, the study, the legal opinion, and what we're doing now, that's all fits together. No, it's not difficult for people to understand it. Maybe the legal opinion is difficult, but we have also made an explanation, a one-page explanation of the whole thing, to use a more normal language. So it's all geared to get public support on this whole thing. So I think that's for people like you also to help to do this. And I can give you the whole thing and what we have, and it's both in English and German. And you know, one of the reasons why I do this at 9 o'clock in the morning with you is, of course, because I don't know how else I can draw attention to it.
Yeah, no, I'm very glad you're doing that. I'm very glad that we can try at least to understand what can be done, because it is, I mean, it's difficult to overstate just how scary it is that we now have a small body of a couple of dozens of people in Brussels who are able to completely, utterly ruin other people's lives without,
Absolutely.
and they have no recourse to any judicial measures, because all of that apparatus that has been built, that has been implemented in all member states, is circumvented. You just,
I mean,
switch it off.
really, the right to be heard from anybody, you know? Those people who are sanctions don't even know that there is a decision to be taken. They don't know what they are. They have no right to response. They're not invited to justify themselves or anything like this one. Nothing. And they just get this statement afterwards, which has a. I mean, look, when you look at Jean-Beau, a statement about him. I mean, these are unsubstantiated allegations, and that would never stand in a rule of law. But it's apparently enough to ruin a person's life, and that is. I want to say something. You know, I've done a lot of wars in my life, and one thing is, of course, that countries who are in war want to have not only a war in the battlefield, but they have also a war on public opinions. And that's since the Civil War in the United States in 1860, 64, whatever, that has become a standard. And there are billions been invested in this, billions. And especially in this one, you know, information exchange, you have artificially created interviews with people we know and things like this suddenly. And there's a lot of money going in it. And the reason why it is so important is because a state who is at war must make sure that, or tries to make sure that its population who suffers from it, and indirectly, maybe also by having family members killed, by asking people to kill somebody else, have to be a very clear picture of what is good and bad. So you have to tell people, they are the good ones, they are the bad ones. And you don't allow, it would be in Russia the same thing. You won't allow it, but we behave just like Russia in this case. You shouldn't allow any other opinions because it undermines our ability to wage war. Now, you can say the European Union officially is not at war, but de facto we are at war with Russia, and or we're losing in addition.
Mentally, they're at war.
So
They
the nervousness. The nervousness has enormous. I mean, if I look at the 1.5 years I'm now in Parliament, I mean, the whole issue which deals with the Israel wars and the Ukraine war has become far, far more aggressive, more. You know, you can hardly say something in Parliament without people shouting you down and things like this one. And there is no discourse on these things. You can have discourse maybe on agriculture policies here, but you can't have a discourse on Gaza, or you can't have a discourse here on Ukraine. And it's because we feel we are at war, and these people who govern us, and this is here bubble here in this Parliament, is of course that they realize that they lose the war, and they have become even tougher on people like us, and that's what it is.
Yeah, because if you lose a war, it must because
expect.
if you lose a war and you're absolutely certain you're better than the other one, it must be because of the enemy from within. So this is the cracking down on the saboteurs, on those who are responsible.
Yeah, you have in German we call it the Dolchstoß, also the dagger and knife in the back. that you are these people who you could have wanted, but if you didn't have these people who put the knife in your back. And this is, of course, very easy. You have to justify why you spent these billions of dollars, why so many people were killed and so much destruction was done. And if the outcome now is that Ukraine is not going to be a member of NATO, possibly not even a member of the European Union, I think, then these people, these politicians would have great problem of justifying what they have done over the last 3 years.
They would. But a question about what is the air like in Brussels? Like when you meet or when you see these people, von der Leyen and Kallas and so on, are they depressed? Are they scared? Or are they
I think
enthusiastic?
battle mood. I mean, we had recently. I was in Parliament when von der Leyen spoke. There were maybe 30 people in the Parliament. I mean, people don't come when she speaks. They don't come when Kallas speaks. It doesn't play any role anymore. The dices are fallen. That's how we think about these things. So there is no much rallying around it. But at the same time, people vote like this, and they vote for war here. This is clear. Anything which is to do with war. We had recently a resolution which had less support than before on Ukraine, and that basically say that we could not negotiate anything. So it took us, that we have to have Russia has to leave all territories. There has to be a special court. There has to be reparations. They have to become in the long-term NATO members. That's all in this resolution. So I think that with this resolution, of course, Europeans couldn't negotiate anymore. I mean, that's basically fixed. I've not experienced this ever before in my life. I mean, I've been many wars that the parliament would set such a framework, because it would make that anybody who negotiates, you take off any flexibility, so that the Europeans will sit at the real table with Russia, will therefore cannot happen, because we have set standards which is not possible. We shouldn't forget we have a war. We have a war because, like in Clausewitz, because we couldn't politically solve the issue of Russia's security concerns and maybe Ukraine's security concerns, for which we should have had used diplomacy. We couldn't, so we went to war. It's the war is going to decide it. Had Russia lost this war, Ukraine would be now in NATO, and they would have lost the access to the Black Sea, and probably there would be many refugees from the eastern parts into Russia. And now if the war would have been a stalemate, then the likelihood you would have a ceasefire. But now that Russia is winning, of course, the ceasefire is not the issue anymore. It will be on Russia's terms, and that's for us very difficult to accept. When you look at the meeting of Merz, for instance, in Berlin, I mean, what he really tries to do is to try to win the war. I mean, you look at the declarations they gave afterwards by talking to the Americans, not even to the Russians, and by ignoring completely what happens on the battlefield. I mean, they make conditions which basically still demand from Russia a capitulation in a war that Russia is winning. I mean, I'm not saying that it's a good thing that Russia is winning or anything like this one. I don't think that it's a good thing at all that this war is there. But I mean, as an analyst, and when we were in the UN, we had also to be very realistic. Where is the war? What are the chances? What interest? Because in the end, peace agreements means to balance interests. What are realistic now? What are not realistic? That has something to do with the war. So, I mean, if I look at this one all, I mean, the thing is basically decided. And we have a Merz there who says he does diplomacy by talking to two Americans who are not even official members of the government. I mean, and then they give a declaration out that the Americans had agreed on all the things. And by the Americans, if you notice, the declaration is not signed by the Americans nor by Zelensky. I mean, they made a declaration about their agreement with the Americans without the Americans signing it on a joint meeting. I mean, I've never seen such a thing. And it's a mind-boggling. But I mean, in this whole atmosphere, you have, of course, the fighting the internal enemy, and that's basically what it is, and I think we all, in a way, internal enemies. Although I say also to the Ukrainian, I'm probably your better friend than anybody else, because I tell you, you have to negotiate, because if not, you end up as a failed state, and I have seen it so often in my life. I'm talking from experience.
Your previous experience as a UN negotiator, yeah.
Yeah, and you have to understand. I mean, now they are careful with me. I mean, I've of course contacted them because of all these developments, and they think, of course, they want to have a good relation with the European Union, and I criticize them, but on the other hand, they had not put me on the blacklist. I mean, that's very interesting, and so I think still I've asked if we could go to Kiev, because there will be a time that they have to see how to deal. I said to them, and yesterday I made an interview to the East West TV channel, which is actually very completely on the other side, but it went quite well. And I said to them, for the Ukrainians, it would be now better to go with Trump and Putin than with the Europeans, because Europe promised you one thing after the other, but none of what they have promised they could implement. None, not a single decision they did. They bullshit you. I mean, they bullshit you because they fear that the end of the war is also the end of their career, and you bleed for it. So try to negotiate, it with Russia. It's a much better bet, because Russia also needs a stable country
Of course.
next to it. It doesn't want a country with NATO and all this type of things, but they want to have a stable country and not a failed state with all these problems it has. So I think you have a chance, and you have good diplomats. We shouldn't forget the Istanbul 10 points was done by the Ukrainian diplomats, not by the Russians. And it was a brilliant, a stellar achievement. I say normal, a stellar achievement of diplomacy. We have never seen in the UN since the UN was created that within 1 month the attacked party could set conditions, 10 points, the other side would accept, withdraw all their army in exchange for neutrality, and without losing any territory. That is a stellar achievement. And I think the Ukrainians have the intellectual capacity, they have the diplomats to negotiate and in these negotiations, making sure that they have a future, that they will have a state, a functioning state, a sovereign state, and so on. They might lose territory, but I think if the army collapses in Ukraine, the political system will collapse. It is almost unavoidable. I've seen it so often, and it's unavoidable. And if this starts, that also the political system disintegrates, and the Ukraine wouldn't have a future for a long time to come.
Yeah, because there are no more structures.
Because our concern should be really for the Ukraine. People think always I'm taking the Russian side. I tell you, I think the real issue is that we have to make sure that the Ukraine survives as a sovereign state. That's really what it is. And a functioning state. There are 30 million people living. They have a right to live, no? And they have gone through a traumatic experience, and they need a future.
Yeah.
And I think that the Europeans, with all their policies, they now destroy this country.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, the greatest crime to me of the last 5 years was to make a Ukrainian neutrality impossible.
Yeah.
That the destruction of Ukrainian neutrality is what now destroys the entire thing that kept us more or less in a reasonable working relationship, right? And it was it started in 2014, and it's unending. And it's an absolute tragedy. And now the same people are working on making any kind of counter speech against what they did also impossible. So maybe just to tie it up, like what is your recommendation on what people in the EU, what should they do now?
What people should do in the EU?
Should they write? Can you write to your representative? Is that an option in the EU? Like, can you? I mean, if
You could
show dissent.
Yeah, we don't have constituencies in the sense, because of this type of election system we have. We have party lists and things like this one. So you could write to your political party and saying, in the EU, we have to defend rule of law. I mean, couldn't you look at this all things? We are very concerned the way the European Union develops and the way it goes. Of course, you could do this, but if it has an impact, I don't know. I think that it has something to do with the media. As long as the main media don't see a threat in this whole thing and rather support it or be quiet about this, I think we will have great difficulties of generating the public awareness of what really happens. And it is terrible what happens. It's really terrible.
Yeah.
And we will have that today in the two decisions, the same thing, that they ignore basically the law.
It's an absolute tragedy, because the whole idea was the opposite. The idea was to do the opposite.
Yeah, especially, we are such an old continent. We have so many wars. We had so many peace agreements. We have so much diplomacy. We have so much experience on the whole thing. And how could we end up like this one? How could we end up? I mean, it would be Europe should have been the first one to say no. You know what Merkel and Sarkozy did in 2008 to continue this way and saying no. Be careful with NATO. We have the Charter of Paris. We have this alternative. Let's go this way. But we didn't. We gave it up. And now we wake up and realize that not the European Union will be a superpower in the future, but it will be Russia. And that's really what they are worried about. We had always thought that the European Union will be maybe at par with the United States and China, those third pillar in a multipolar world. That's really what we hope to achieve. And now we realize that probably Russia and even India might overtake us in international importance. I mean, we're geopolitically completely isolated. Mrs. Callas cannot even go to the United States. Not to speak about India, not to speak about China, not to speak about Russia. I mean, that's what a diplomat should do, shouldn't it? Huh? I mean, maybe.
I wish she was at least glad from it.
Maybe not in Russia the first time, but yeah.
Okay, I am. Thank you very much for this information, also about how things run in Brussels and your firsthand insight. Is there anything we didn't mention that you still think should be discussed?
Yeah. No, I think that's okay. Yeah, it's yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I will direct people to your homepage to find more information. And what's the other place where you said you
the BSW homepage? I can send that both to you. Also here from the Parliament.
BSW homepage and okay.
Yeah, it's a BSW EP something, but I send it to you. Yeah.
Okay, please. I'll put all of these links into the information box below. Michael von der Schulenburg.
I don't know. I send it to you. You have to put it in the box.
No, yeah. Sorry, I'll put it in the box. Yeah. I'll put it into the description.
Yeah, don't ask me for anything technical.
Michael von der Schulenburg, thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks a lot. Okay, take care. Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye.